Hello. Welcome to Almost 80. I'm Bennye, your host. Now that you have rung the bell, come on in, have a seat, and make yourself at home. Today, I am so happy to have my younger daughter with me, Keisha. Thank you so much for being with me, Keisha.
Hey, how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm hanging in there, okay?
Yep.
I thought I'd do this little podcast. I'm a little nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do it. I am almost 80 and I do have a story to tell. And
You do.
I think I wanted to start with the cotton because I wanted to explain the cover.
So people looking at the cover, you're like, okay, let me tell you why this cotton is on this cover. Because it's not obvious, right? It's not obvious.
Right. And people that I've shown it to, the first question they ask is, why is there cotton on this?
Why? So let me ask you then, why is there cotton on your cover?
Okay, cotton is on my cover because, first of all, it was my first job. When I was about 11 years old, my mom and I went out to chop cotton, and we picked cotton and did all kinds of things. And, looking back on it, I don't even know how we did it, how I did it. I was so young. She would wake me up. I was the oldest child in the house, and she would wake me up a little bit after 4:00, on those mornings that we had to go work. I would have to help her prepare the breakfast and the dinner, the lunch that we were going to have at the same time. And everything was made from scratch, So we had to, some days I remember Daddy would have gone out and killed a chicken, and she would have feathered it, defeathered it or whatever, and cleaned it and had it on frying when they woke me up, and sometimes I would have to churn the milk so we could have fresh butter. And, so she'd fry chicken. We'd have corn that we had canned the year before or was fresh that year or whatever. And even sometimes I remember she would make what you call sweet cake. It was like a cake in the iron skillet.
And it wasn't cornbread.
No, it wasn't cornbread. It was cake,
Cake. And she would cook it on top of the stove?
No, she would cook it inside the stove, but she would cook it in the iron skillet.
Huh. And it tastes like cake.
Yeah, it tastes like cake. It would be cake. She used butter, everything that you put in a cake, eggs, all that. Yeah.
Fresh in the morning before you went out and worked.
In the morning before we left the house.
Ooh, child, I can't even imagine. So I think what we haven't told the listeners is we haven't told them where you were. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in DeKalb, Texas.
Which is where?
I know. Most people want to know where it is. It's in the northeast corner of Texas. Right there near Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. It's right there. And when I wanted to be proper, I remember one time a guy asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "DeKalb." and he knew about DeKalb, so he said, "Oh, you mean DeKalb?" Yeah. So DeKalb is where I grew up. Yeah.
Understood. Okay. So you were in DeKalb, Texas.
We had 1,600 people. It always said it on the population of DeKalb, 1,600 people. It never changed the whole time I grew up there. That number.
And the truth is, you weren't even really in DeKalb.
Right. We were 5 miles out.
You were 5 miles outside of DeKalb.
Right. In Bethlehem, in Bethlehem community. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So you were down in Bethlehem community and you were the oldest.
Yeah.
You had younger brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And so your mom would wake you up after 4 to go out to the fields. And was this during school or when was this?
Actually, it was like we didn't get a break. The day after school, we would get out of school one day, and the next day we were preparing to go and chop cotton. And we did this for about, 6 weeks more in the summer.
Okay. So you did it all summer. This was your summer job. Oh.
Yeah, this was like my summer job,
I see. But you were 11.
I was 11.
That's the problem with this story, right?
Right. And I think the first day we went out, they did tell Mama that, and my cousin Iris, she and Marcia. And the boss told them, say, I don't think they're ready because we couldn't keep up and we didn't know how to hold. We didn't know. We were cutting down all the cotton and all kinds of stuff. So they said, these kids are not ready. So we had to go home and try it the next year. Yeah, something.
Wow. So she'd wake you up. She cooked basically a whole meal.
Right.
You would help out.
I would help out. Would make the biscuits because we would have buttermilk biscuits, fresh biscuits, rice or oatmeal or something like that to go with it, and some kind of little meat, dry salt or something, or a little ham if we had something. Yeah, we would do that. And we would get our Kool-Aid ready for the lunch the next day. And the way we do that, we would put ice in like a gallon jug. We would fill it with ice, and then we would fill it about halfway with Kool-Aid. By the time lunchtime came around, all you needed to do was shake it up, and we would wrap it in paper, some kind of paper, newspaper, real tight, and then put it in a pillowcase. And take it out. That's how we would keep it cold. And by the time
where did you get the ice?
Well, we had an ice man. We had an ice box, they call it, not a refrigerator. It's called an ice box. And at the top, you could put a big block of ice. And there was a man who would come around with ice, and he would put this ice up in your ice box.
Okay. And it came as a whole solid block?
As a whole solid block.
You had to chip off of it?
You had to chip off of it, yeah.
Oh, and y'all didn't have electricity, did you?
No, because we had a wood burning stove, so they would have to make a fire in the wood cooking stove.
So how did your ice box stay cold?
Well, it had a door to it, and it stayed as long as it could.
It was sealed. Okay. It was
sealed, yeah.
Would it ever melt out?
Yeah, sometimes it would melt out. Because it would get hot down there in the summer, yeah.
Oh, it's hot down in Texas.
I know it.
I can't imagine. Okay, so what kind of clothes would y'all wear? What did you wear out to work in these fields or wherever you were working?
Yeah, well, we wore like cotton. Cotton was the material. Yeah, so it's like khaki pants, a shirt, long sleeve shirt, and then a khaki shirt on top of it. So it's like doubled up. Because what happened is when you're working, if you can sweat and the clothes next to you would get wet, then if a breeze came through, it would cool your body down. I think that was
So you used the clothing to help keep you cool.
To help keep us cool. So we would wear a headscarf on our heads and a straw hat to keep the sun away. Yeah. And closed-in shoes.
And so when you would get there, somebody would come pick you up? Because y'all didn't have a car, right?
No, we didn't have a car.
So somebody would come get you?
Miss Cora D would come and get us most times. And she was our straw boss. And she had a pickup truck. And I'm not sure if it was her pickup truck or they let her use it or whatever. But it had a top on it, like a bed, they call it. And we would all pile in there, and she would go from place to place picking up people.
What is a straw boss? I've never heard that term before.
Okay, straw boss is basically the boss, the one who did the pace setting at the cotton field. Okay.
Oh, so she set the pace for picking the cotton.
She set the pace. She set the pace for chopping, how fast you would go on the rows.
And you had to go at her pace.
Yeah, you had to go at her pace.
And what if you didn't?
Well, first of all, we would be talking, me and Iridale and them, we'd be in the back, we'd be laughing and talking, and we'd get behind a lot, just not just because we were kids, but because we were fooling around, a lot.
Yeah.
So they would, and sometimes the adults would be afraid that they were going to make us stop, not bring us or whatever.
Yes.
So they would start cutting on our road, meeting us back to catch us up a lot of times.
Oh, Lord.
And then sometimes the white boss, I don't even know if we called him straw boss or not, but he would come through in a horse, looking over the field and just, just terrorizing us actually, because when he came, we would like really try to straighten up,
Yeah. And what kind of person was that? You were only 11 or 12 at this time. So was this person much older, or was the boss? Did he own the land? Like who was this person?
I think this person was somebody who worked for the boss. The boss didn't.
Okay.
He was a worker.
Okay. And did you think he was an old man at the time, or was he like?
He was middle-aged or a little, maybe 30s or something like that. Or
okay.
40.
Okay. Full grown, but not like elderly.
Yeah, but not elderly. No.
And what kind of, how did he treat y'all? Did he say anything to you, or did he just ride?
Not necessarily, just his presence.
Just being there.
Just being there, yeah. And then he would, I think he would go from field to field or something like that. Because he didn't tarry that long while we were there, yeah.
Okay. And just, if you can give all of us listening just an idea, like what is picking cotton? Can you just tell us what picking cotton is? And then after you explain that to us, tell us what chopping cotton is, because you've always said I picked and chopped cotton. And so most people are not going to even understand the difference. So if you can help us just in simple terms, what are those things?
Okay. Well, what happens is when they plant the cotton, the first thing that happens is that you have to chop the cotton because you have to thin it out. You have to help it to grow to maturity so that the cotton bolls come on it later on. Okay.
Okay.
So,
and if you have too many of the plants together, they won't grow like that. Is this like a pruning? People.
Yeah, it is like a pruning.
It's like a pruning. Okay.
You would take your hoe. And you would actually, it was kind of like sculpturing almost, you could say.
Yeah.
Because you had to leave a certain amount of cotton in one little patch and space between it, so that it would grow properly or would not take up all the soil of something. Then there would be weeds, but at the beginning there weren't that many weeds. It was mostly just the cotton because it was at the beginning stages. But as the cotton grew, weeds also and Johnson grass also grew up with it. So
Johnson grass. Hold on, Johnson grass. What's that?
Johnson grass. It's a kind of weed, but it would grow up and sometimes it would look kind of like the cotton. And we didn't know sometimes if we were cutting grass or cotton. So that's why they would come by looking and saying, you're cutting too much of the cotton. And we would be trying to weed out the weeds, It was a mess.
It was a mess. Okay, so you would do this for hours in the sun. Yeah. 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old.
10 hours a day.
Tell me about your lunch. What did you do? You had made this lunch. Y'all had made this lunch. Granny had made the lunch. You had helped. It was there somewhere sitting off waiting for y'all to eat. And so how would you know when it was time for you to break for lunch? And did you have any breaks before then? Did you have to work straight through the lunch?
Well, we had to work straight through the lunch,
Okay.
We could stop like you put your hoe on the row at 7:00, you had to start chopping. Okay.
Yep.
And if you would go down the row all the way down, and then you would come back another row, and where the truck was parked. Right. And then you could get out and then you could go and get some water. And they had like a big keg looking container there. And most times they did have some ice in it. It was cold water. Okay.
And so somebody else brought this water for y'all.
Yeah.
You didn't bring the water. Okay.
No, we didn't bring the water. Somebody else did. And they would have two tin dippers. I don't know if you know what a dipper looks like. Looks like the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper in the sky.
Okay. I think I've seen pictures of things that look like dippers.
Dippers. It had a handle. It was like a cup with a handle.
Got it. Okay.
So, and as a matter of fact, I think you dip the water down there. I'm not even sure if it came out of a spout. I'm not quite sure about how that handled. But
I
don't remember. There were like two of them there, and everybody in the field had to share these two cups every time you go to get water. Okay.
Oh, I see. So you would dip the cup and drink from that same cup.
Drink from the same cup. Yeah.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, we all drank from the same cup.
Okay. And every time you finish two rows, you could make your way back to the water.
Make your way to get some water. Right.
And where'd y'all go to the bathroom?
Okay. We were like, the field was like next to some woods.
Yeah.
And you would have to go in the woods and use the bathroom.
And what would you do to wipe?
Sometimes I think Mama would keep some, we had the Sears and Roebuck books and things that came with them.
Oh, yeah.
She always kind of kept some of that in her thing. So if you needed something like that, she could give it to you before you go out before you had to go.
See. Yeah.
That's what we did. That's what we used. Yeah.
Okay. It's lunchtime. It was time for y'all to break, and you would go get your food, and you sit probably under some tree or something.
Yeah, we sat under the tree and we would eat this lunch, and then we'd kind of find a spot where we could kind of lay down. A lot of times, a lot of people would take a little nap after they finished eating before it was time to go back. Okay. But a little bit before 1, you need to be getting up and
get up.
Getting your hoe and getting the last drink of water or whatever, putting your food stuff away so that you could go back to the field and get to work. And we would work until 6:00 in the evening. Repeat that. Yeah.
You did this all summer long?
For most of the summer. A big portion of the summer, yeah.
And how old were you when you stopped doing that?
Oh, I finished high school. It was through high school I worked like this.
Okay. Yeah. How much did you make? Did they pay you every day or did they pay you at the end of the week?
At the end of the week, they paid, it was $3.50 a day is what we made.
And they pay you at the end of the week?
At the end of the week, yeah.
Cash, because there's really no other way to pay at that time.
Yeah.
This is in the 1950s. Yep.
Yeah.
50s and 60s, I guess.
Right. Okay. And actually they would pay my mama. We never really saw it, And we had to do this because it was, it helped feed us at home.
Yeah, of course. No, I understand.
Because my dad had 2nd-degree burns and he couldn't do much work. So he did tended to the fields at home. And then we went out and did this so that we could get the things that we needed, like some clothes for school and some the stuff that you needed to buy at the store, like flour and meal and stuff.
What did your mom do when you were in school? Is this what she did for work primarily, or was she doing other things when y'all were in school?
Yeah. A lot of times she didn't have a job, but sometimes she did domestic work. She would go uptown and do housework for our white folks, cleaning and cooking and carrying on like that.
So, one of your friends, and I won't name her just because I'm not sure if we should name her, but I remember she said one time she didn't have no money, but the prayer was that they didn't need none. It's like, I don't have any money, but Lord, don't make me need none, right?
Yeah.
So do you think a lot of that, the cotton experience for you, helped the family exist, and make it? But did you feel like you were poor?
No.
Okay.
I never felt like we were poor because, first of all, we did have our own house and we had land,
Okay.
and we were able to breathe fresh air. And we always had food because we grew our own food. And we had chickens, we had cows, we had pigs, and then we grew everything. And when we weren't working in the fields in the summer, and I think they kind of paced it out like that so that we would be able to can the food that we had grown, so we would have that through the winter. So we were able to can vegetables and stuff so that would last through the winter for us to eat. So I never felt poor growing up. I didn't feel like I was, even though I knew that we didn't have what other people had. And, if you go uptown, you see the houses they lived in, some of them, and, you see them walking around in nice things and stuff. You knew you didn't have that, but I didn't classify myself as, being.
You didn't see yourself as poor.
I didn't see myself as poor. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And you weren't hungry. I
was not hungry at all.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we had good food, organic food.
You had organic, okay? You had what other people trying to. It's what we paid top dollar for these days.
Y'all paid. We paid top dollar.
Yes. So how did you feel about working in the fields at the time? Do you remember? Because maybe your feelings then are different than your feelings now that you're 78, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel about working in the fields when you were a kid?
Well, I didn't like it. So, and I remember one time we were at the Bennye farm, I think. And when we got there, or when we were getting ready to leave, I looked up on it was like a terrace on top of the Bennye house, right?
Yeah.
They had a big house there. And one of their daughters, who was about our age, was up there and she was just sitting leisurely and, like sunbathing or something.
Yeah.
And I looked at her, and it's the first time in my whole life that I remember thinking, I wish I were white.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to go and do this kind of hard work. But it was, that was a way of life, and our parents tried to keep our minds on a positive scale. So that
how they do that?
Well, through faith, and keep telling us that we could do, that we were going to be able to do better, and this is how it is now, basically. And and kept us. At home we played games, and we did a lot of different things that were fun. They tried to keep things pretty fun. And then we went to church, and we had a life there, and we had fellowship there, and and everybody in our community. We had a real community. Everybody knew everybody. You could walk up and down the road, and you could stop at anybody's house. And if you were hungry, they always ask you if you're hungry. Do you want some water? If it's like a hot day, you want some water? I remember Miss Ennis. She always had some fried apple pies on her kitchen table. And if we had to go to the store, I had to go someplace and stop, we would say, we got to stop by Miss Ennis's house. And we would stop by and we would sit down, and she would say, you children, y'all kids, are you hungry? And we would, Mama had told us, don't go there asking.
Stop going there. Stop asking for this food.
Don't be asking for food and stuff like that. And child, we would say, no, not really. We say something like that, real.
Trying to be coy.
Yeah, trying to be coy. She would say, well, I have some fried pies. Now, y'all come on in here and get you a piece of fried pie. And we say, okay, thank you. Oh, we were so happy. We didn't know what to do.
Knowing the whole time.
Knowing the whole time. That was the plan. That was the plan. We were going to sit up in that child, eat some fried apple pies. Yep. Then there were a few people who were a little on the stingy side. They may not ask you up front, do you want something or whatever. They'd give you some water, but that would be about it,
But do you think it's because they didn't? Do you think it's because they just didn't have it to share? Because I imagine that some people may not have had that much food.
They may not have had that much, but this one particular family, I think they had it, but they just they were just that way, and that's human nature.
It is.
People are like that, and other people who are more giving.
Absolutely, in every community you'll have that. Right? People are different. People are different by nature. Well, and it probably stood out to you because Granny was the kind of person who just gave. Like if you, and as far as I knew her, as from my life exposure to her, she was just a very giving person. So I'm sure that if people came to your house, she was always going to feed you, always going to give you something, always, like without question,
Right. As a matter of fact, we always had leftovers. And I think people always knew that because we always had a pot of beans, a pot of greens, a pot, whatever it was a pot. Okay.
Yes. Big pot. Because you have a lot of siblings.
Yeah. And we had fresh cornbread, like every evening we had fresh cornbread. Every morning we had fresh biscuits, And there was always some left over.
Yeah.
People would come by and they would want to eat something. And we had this one guy who was a little bit mentally deranged.
Ill. He was mentally ill.
Yeah. And he would come by and he would say, just give me some crackling bread, And sometimes Mama made crackling bread and that's what he really liked, So we'd give him bread.
Which is cornbread fried, right?
It's cornbread with cracklings in it. You know?
I don't know what cracklings are.
Okay. It's like, what skins are?
Yeah.
Like skins with the fat on it. And when you cook it, you don't take all the fat off of it. But if you take the fat off of it, it's kind of called crackling. And you can add that to the cornmeal batter, and cook it. And it comes out as crackling bread. That's what he liked. I didn't care for that because I don't like.
I can't see caring for it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you asked before about the difference between chopping cotton.
Yes, we never got to it. Tell me, okay. So you said, honey, we can get to talking. Okay, so you said you explained chopping cotton. That was when you basically thinned it down made it thin on the row and thin between each other. The plants had to be far enough away and the row had to be thin. And so tell me a little bit about picking cotton, because I think that's what people think of more when they think of working in cotton fields.
Right. Picking cotton happened after the cotton had grown up to about knee high or a little bit above,
Okay.
And the bolls would develop, and then they would break open, and the cotton would kind of like flow out of the bolls. It was kind of like a flower that's blooming. Okay? Yes.
Got it. And that's what when we see, quote, picture of cotton, that's what we're looking at.
Right. So we would take a long sack. It was like a burlap. It wasn't burlap. It was some kind of like cotton like a sack that was like, I would say, maybe 5 feet or something long.
Okay. Yeah.
And it had a thing on there to strap around your shoulder. You put it over your shoulder.
Oh. And like you walked with it. You stooped
like
over with
purses that goes across your.
Yeah, like a crossbody. Like a crossbody purse.
Yeah, like a crossbody purse. And it's going to go across you. And then you would go through and you would pick the cotton out of the bowls. Okay. And put it in the sack. And you would try to fill your sack up. Once your sack was filled up, you would go up to this place where they would weigh it. Okay. And then however much it weighed, I don't even remember. There were like pennies they would give you for a pound.
Nothing.
I don't have to remember. We just didn't make anything picking cotton. Yeah. But that.
So did you make more chopping cotton or picking cotton?
It probably ended up about the same. I don't know. I don't really know.
You don't know because you were too young. So this is okay. So this goes back to the crux of the problem. This is child labor, obviously, right?
Right.
That families, it's not like anybody was putting a gun to anybody's head, but families needed their children to work. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They needed their children to work. So the circumstances were set, the table was set for all of this child labor, and people were willing to pay you, right? So, and honestly relied on your labor. It wasn't just willing to pay you, they relied on your labor, right?
Right.
How many kids were out there? How many people were out there? And how many kids would be there? Be you and your Miss Erie and Miss Marsha. Who else would be out there?
I think in our field, there was probably about, I don't know, I would say, because there were kids from other places sometimes. So I would say probably up to maybe 10 kids our age or something like that.
Okay. And how many adults?
And the rest were adults. I'd say 20, 30 maybe.
Okay. A good percentage were kids.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. You know, it's like a third of the people were kids, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we picked this cotton and they would put it up on the thing and weigh it and write something down. We didn't keep the tabs. They did. Okay. So we weren't even sure if we got paid what we were supposed to get paid. We would try to keep in our heads how much it was and how much we should.
Okay? Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm not sure if it all panned out like that.
Tabulated just right.
Tabulated right or whatever. And it was during the fall that we did the picking.
Right. Okay. So you chopped it right in the beginning of the summer.
Right.
And it took all summer to grow.
Yeah. And then
in the fall you would actually pick it. But what about school? See, my school would have been back in session.
Well, we would go to school, and sometimes on Saturdays we'd have to go pick. And sometimes they would let us out of school. Like I remember being out of school in October, they would let us out a week or two to pick cotton. Yeah, to pick cotton. And on a couple of those years or so, when the cotton, when it wasn't that much to pick where we were, or it was either that, or they paid a little more up in Quantum, Texas. I think it was called Quantum, Texas, or Quanta, Texas, or something like that. So we would get in a big old truck, and Daddy would go. I would go with Daddy. The rest of the kids would sit home with Mama. And we would ride in this truck. He'd take a mattress so that we would have somewhere to sleep when we got up to Quanah. And that would be this big farmhouse and with different rooms. And we would have a room. Other people would have a room. We were like migrant workers.
Yep.
And we would be there. Somebody would have a thing you cook on. Maybe they'd have a stove or something. But
you can't even quite piece it all together.
I can't quite piece it all together. I just know one of the good things I remember about it is that at the end of some days, Daddy would say, "You can have one of those, that ice cream that's in a thing that has nut or butter."
Oh, no, you talking about the ice cream cone that has the peanuts on top?
Yeah, the peanuts on top.
What was that called?
Yeah, I can't even remember
I can't think of what it's called.
But he would say, you can have one of those. And I look forward to having one of those. Like at the
Where would you get it?
So I think somebody came around with it.
Selling it. Somebody would come around selling it.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that sweet? And who would do your hair?
Daddy would try to comb it.
Oh, Lord.
And it was a mess. Yeah.
Hot mess.
Or there was another cousin, Christine, Sally's mom, because they went with us a couple of times.
Okay.
And I ate with them a lot because she would do some cooking. Otherwise, we would just have like pork and beans that we would have for dinner.
Okay.
Could open up and eat. Yeah. Like you were camping, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't camping.
This is far from camping, doggone it. This is far from camping. Oh my God.
Yeah. Camping, but not quite.
Not quite. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, you know what? I feel like this is an amazing story that a lot of people may not know, right? May not know that in Texas, in the United States, in the 40s and 50s,
right,
and 60s, there were children still working. There's children still working today, but we won't get into that today.
Right.
Because you and I, we can sit and talk. We can solve the world's problems.
Right.
But is there anything about picking cotton? I'm not really sure if have we missed anything, Ma? I think that's the question. Anything about your experience picking cotton, chopping cotton? Anything you'd like to share about your experience?
I'm trying to think. We covered a big chunk of it,
Yep.
And if there's some other episode that I, think of something that I think should be included, I can just include it there or whatever. But I'm happy to give this story because looking back on it, it's like people need to know this. My own kids, my own grandkids, my own family, because even some of my younger siblings, the younger they were, they missed out on that, so they weren't. They didn't
well,
have.
In a way, I mean, that's good, right? It's good.
It's good, but I'm saying, yeah. But sometimes when you start talking, it's like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the things that was true about our community is that we don't really tell a lot of our stories,
Right.
So I'm really thankful that you were able to share that today. So thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for stopping by. I'll see you next time.